Well, Merry Christmas, fellas.
Merry Christmas.
How's it going?
Merry Christmas to you, sir.
Here we are doing number 2.
That's right.
You survived the first one.
Appears to be. We're here.
Gotcha.
Yeah, we're still alive.
Yes, you are, and thriving. Aside from being the holiday season, I understand you've got a birthday coming up very soon.
Yep, just around the corner.
Happy birthday.
30, so
30.
I'll be
I have a
officially old,
grandson.
man.
A grandson now that's 30. Imagine
Oh, Lord.
that.
Time does fly, doesn't it?
Time flies. Yeah.
Time flies. You've picked an interesting location for number 2. It's not quite as luxurious yet as the last one that we were at. Why did you pick this location?
Well, this is a clear demonstration in real time, for real, about development in the deep south of the peninsula, the southern peninsula. So we're here on Harding Street, which is just southwest of Queen Square right here. We're south of Queen. And in all the years that I've lived in this neighborhood, which is now close to 35, anything south of Queen wasn't wasn't prime. And, there was a lot of things about south of Queen that epitomized a lot of the, negative ideas that people had about the neighborhood, back then and less so now. But here we are on Harding Street. We're a block north of St. James Street. There's a brand new school going up here. And so, we want to, where we broadcast from, where we create these podcasts from, we want it to reflect the full spectrum of our business. And this certainly is one of those places and one of those moments.
Jake, what does filming in a new build here, south of Queen, in the south end, in the city, what does it represent?
Well, I think to me, especially in this side of the city, which for a long time was largely underdeveloped and forgotten about, as I mentioned, being new to the city and investing in the city, I think it's a fantastic sign because it shows new development in areas that previously weren't developed in. So in my eyes, it means that there's a lot of optimism about the city, and I certainly feel it. So that's what I mean.
So tell me, why is this part of the neighborhood getting so much attention right now?
Because people are looking for a neighborhood that's more walkable, a neighborhood that represents community. So I think in a modern time where technology is so prevalent, we've lost that connection that we had for a long time, especially that sense of community. A community like this, like Uptown, which is walkable, has that sense of community, and I think that's what people are really looking for. And I mean, that's certainly what I was looking for, and that was one of the big reasons I moved here.
Bob, can you echo that?
Well, the reality is that, the level of interest in this neighborhood has been accelerating now for at least 15 years. And we've seen a lot of infill, we've seen a lot of redevelopment, reinvestment in housing stock that's north of Queen. A lot of people moved in, a lot of people have invested a lot of money in the neighborhood. And there's still a whole stream of people who want to live in this urban environment, in this beautiful, neighborhood that was designed for people, not cars, before cars were even invented. So there's a strong demand, a strong desire by people to live in this kind of environment. And frankly, we need more places for people to live. So this whole, south of Queen area that's been neglected for so long, now is the big opportunity. And you've seen the city in the last, 5-10 years building new streets, new sidewalks, putting new services in the ground. You have a new school under construction, literally at the corner here. So, it's really that moment in time where we can begin to capitalize on the demand. Newer generations, based on environmental concerns, they don't want to be driving 3 cars. They don't want to have 3 cars in the garage. They want to have a lifestyle where they can get to where they want to be quickly, have access easily to amenities. Kids can actually walk to school. Kids can actually walk to the pool or the library. So what this development south of Queen represents is more opportunity for people to get into the neighborhood.
It is Christmas time. You got a Christmas tree behind you. There's Christmas lights across the street. What are some of the great memories and traditions that you remember from your childhood?
Well, I think for me it was always Christmas Eves because we'd always have people over. So 5 or 6 o'clock every Christmas Eve, we would have 20 people come by. My father would have cooked a big meal. We always had stew, and I mean that's something my grandfather does every year here as well. So although I've moved from Halifax and I don't necessarily get to experience there anymore, I get to do it here with my grandfather, which is just as good. It's fantastic.
Well, I've been the beneficiary of lots of that. Nice to see that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree and that the grandson appreciates the tradition.
It's all about the food, man,
Well, it really is.
and the tree.
Yeah, if you haven't been to one of Bob's Christmas Eve, what do you call them?
We used to call it the Christmas Eve party for strays, is what we used to call it,
I did
because
a stray.
the people I would meet people in the course of my, going about activity, and I would say to people, so what do you do for Christmas? And they would say, nothing. I'm here alone. I don't have any family here. I just moved here. All kinds of variations on a theme. And I'd say, well, come to my house for Christmas Eve. So, as time developed, in the last 2-3 years before COVID, we would have 80 to 100 people come to the house on Christmas Eve, and we would have piles of food and all of that. So it's pretty cool. It's all about food and time together, really.
Yeah. Well, you are almost an Uptown Christmas tradition. We are Uptown. Tell me what else, what does it feel like in the Uptown area at this time of year?
Well, when I was a kid, what I remember, and people remember Christmas differently, but I remember all the songs and the movies and the lyrics in the songs that talked about, busy sidewalks, streets decked out for holiday time, red and green flashing traffic lights, stores, windows, decorated with toys, and all of those songs, it's a white Christmas, and all of those songs. And then there was, the great movie that everybody knows, It's a Wonderful Life. I mean, that whole movie was centered around this quaint, downtown, authentic downtown area at Christmas. So when I think about all of those things that resonated with me as a kid, and we're living here in Uptown St. John with these beautiful old stores and these beautiful streets and this authentic neighborhood from 120 years ago, to me, this neighborhood to me really is about Christmas.
So this could be George Bailey's neighborhood.
It could be George Bailey. This could be George Bailey's new house, right?
Because God knows he needs
a new house. That's right, yeah.
Jake, tell me, you're newer to town. It's been 5 years, but newer. That's still what I would consider new. How does Uptown feel to you this time of year?
Oh, it's fantastic. I think, to kind of echo what my grandfather said, growing up, we watched Christmas movies, of course. And so many of them were set in these old historic, quaint towns. And you lose that a lot in the bigger cities. Halifax, where I'm from, is, it's not a huge city, but it's bigger, and you don't really feel that. But here, walking through King Square, it's all lit up. You've got the Imperial Theater with all the lights on the front, a nice light snow. You've got the city market. It's just, I don't know, it's beautiful. It feels like a traditional Christmas, the way Christmas should feel. And I feel like you don't get that in a lot of places anymore, but you do get that here in St. John.
I love that. It feels the way Christmas should feel. I think everybody's going to get that.
Yeah.
So, what, Jake? Oh, no, Bob then? I lost Jake for a sec. Bob, Jake, Bob.
Yeah.
We're going to have to edit. Bob, tell me, we've talked a lot about this neighborhood in particular, but Uptown overall is seeing a resurgence. What's driving that?
Well, one of the elephants in the room, for a while now has been the issue around homelessness and mental health and, all this issues that we've seen on the street. And so that's been the elephant in the room. And so, we often hear from people who say, well, I guess people don't want to live uptown anymore. And, well, I guess people don't want to buy houses uptown anymore. And so, we hear that. And we're happy to talk about that. We're happy to, face it up and, be frank and transparent and talk about it. So it's true. It's been an issue. But it's an issue in every city in the country. And, the facts remain. And, I always tend to like to go for facts when people have opinions because, people don't always have opinions that are based on facts. But the fact at the moment is, in this current year, we've got sales that are 58% higher this year uptown, residential sales, 58% higher than they were last year. We've got the average price of a house uptown right now at $378,000, which is 16% higher than last year. We've got shorter days on market. We've got less months of supply. So by all the stats that really tell the tale, people are not moving uptown. And this development, this redevelopment in the Deep South, there's a market for that, and the numbers speak to that. A phone rings off the wall. People want to live in this neighborhood, and at Christmas, it's a great time to live in this neighborhood. But the stats really speak to the reality.
Here, here. Jake, you sort of grew up in the suburbs, but now you live in an uptown core. Tell me how living in an uptown/downtown core really changes one's life.
Yeah, so I think you don't really realize it until you've experienced it. I grew up in the suburbs, so to go from a suburban setting to a more urban setting, living uptown, of course, I was a bit skeptical at the beginning. I was like, who wants to live in town when you can live in the suburbs? But man, I was wrong. I couldn't live in the suburbs anymore. Being able to, walk out the door, see friends in a matter of minutes on foot, walk to restaurants, bars, be, right in the middle, not necessarily living, but be able to walk right into the middle of, big events like Moonlight Bazaar and other things. It's fantastic. I mean, I really feel like I'm part of a community here, and more so than I did, ever did while growing up in the suburbs. So.
Bob, tell me how this project, 23 Harding Street, new build, south of Queen in the South End, how did this come together?
Well, the Coles Notes version, 8 years ago, I got a cold call from a young guy who was only 22 or 23 years old, a guy named Adam Pottle. And he wanted to see a 2-unit that was for sale just a couple of blocks from here. And I met Adam that day. He bought the house. He got a chance to flip the house real fast for a chunk of change, a bunch of money. And that whetted his appetite about real estate. So Adam is a passionate young man. He's now just barely older than Jake. We've done 8 or 10 deals, Adam and I, in the past 8 years. And so Adam bought some land on Harding Street a couple of years ago after we had a discussion about whether that was a good idea. And we knew the school was coming, but it was still pretty far off and people weren't very conscious. So he was able to gather this lot and the lot across the street 4 or 5 years ago. Was impatient to get going, invested the money, got plans done, got approvals done, but he still needed a partner to sort of round out his capabilities. So another good friend of mine, Lads Batten, who's been a developer in this city for more than 30 years, has built dozens and dozens of houses and other projects. And met Lads at O'Leary's a few times, and Lad was just chomping at the bit. He wanted to do more projects, even though he's a little older than me. He was eager to do something, and so it all sort of gelled. And one day, Lads met Adam, and the young guy with the ambition, and meets the older, experienced guy with a bit of capital, and they formed a partnership, and here we are. And so it's underway. The timing is spectacular. These two guys work so well together. It's a perfect match. It's kind of a match made in heaven. And here we are sitting right in the middle of their first project. So a really cool story, and in so many different ways.
So having been a realtor for a while, having lived in the South End for almost 35 years, what does it say to you when a builder commits to multiple projects in this area?
Well, I was one of the early believers and one of the early adopters, and so I've been flogging this story for a long time. I've seen the capacity and the capability and the potential in this neighborhood for a long time. And then when the school project emerged after a lot of community work together to get this to happen, and then to meet a couple of people like Adam and Lads who both had ambition and interest, and it's for me, it's the culmination and sort of the icing on the cake of years of trying to convince people, that investing in the neighborhood was something smart to do. I mean, I've invested, the last 35 years of my life, all the capital I had, all the time, effort, and best intentions I've had, I've been all in for a long time. So to find some partners and we're actually building things, finally, pretty exciting.
You talked a lot about the data early on. Jake, why is the growth sustainable and not just a trend?
I think so. Yeah, I mean, we've seen pretty substantial population growth in the last several years. We've got solid industry around the city, so I mean, that supports the economy. And I think with that groundwork set, we're certainly in the a place where we can have sustainable growth long term.
And can I add, Derek?
You can add whatever you want.
If you do any reading about the direction of things, how people are thinking, how, how we're in the middle of an evolution about how we live, how we want to live. And if you marry together the, the concerns that people have about environmental issues, living cleanly, reducing their footprint, and all of those things, has driven people in the whole Western world more and more away from suburban living towards urban living, for all the reasons that urban living makes sense environmentally. So the sustainability of this trend, I think, is solidly grounded in the fact that people, as I said earlier, don't want to drive 3 cars, don't want to spend a whole lot of time sitting in their car, want to live a life where they have access to amenities, their kids can walk to school. That's what makes it sustainable.
So the province is building a new school less than a block away. The city has invested a tremendous amount in curbs and sidewalks and beautification in this neighborhood. How do you think those types of investments really drive renewal and revival?
Well, the way that this school was developed, this was a community initiative by a number of community-based organizations, both economic organizations and social organizations that came together to make the case that the neighborhood deserved investment, improvement, better facilities for the education of children. For many years, one of the issues in the neighborhood has been that lots of people live here who were young professionals, married, without kids, and lots of people that were 45 and 50 with kids in high school and after lived here. But there was this whole missing demographic, young families with kids, because the perception had been that the schools weren't, up to scratch. So this school is a project and an initiative of this neighborhood, the citizens that live here, in a way to sort of balance the demographic in the neighborhood, so people can stay and live their entire life the way they want to, in the city, in an urban neighborhood, with all the things that come with that.
Jake, you're about to turn 30.
Yeah.
You got a long career in real estate ahead. You've established yourself very well in the neighborhood. What excites you the most about the future of the neighborhood?
Well, I mean, as my grandfather said many times, it's a neighborhood that greatly deserves, investment and growth. And to be, what I feel to be kind of the early stages of it, I think, you were definitely here earlier than I was, but it's exciting. So, I mean, I think to be in the neighborhood and to watch it evolve into what I think it will is what excites me the most. I see a really bright future for St. John, especially the Uptown. So it'll be an interesting few decades. I hope to be around for all of them. I'm sure I will.
Hear, hear. Paint me a picture of this neighborhood in 5 to 10 years.
We'll see continued new development. I think what remains of the heritage that needs reinvestment and restoration, that'll happen, especially in the next 5 to 10 years. But I think towards the south end here, where there's a lot of vacant land, there's buildings that aren't in great shape. I think we'll see a lot of newer development down there to provide housing to all levels of the socioeconomic classes, high and low. So I see a bright future for the city.
Bob, what do you think it's going to look like in 5 to 10 years?
More people living here, more density. We've had 5,000 or 6,000 people living here for about as long as I've lived here. I think we're starting to crest 7,000 or 8,000. But I think, as this intensification continues, the city just announced a program to encourage people to build high-rise apartments in certain parts of the neighborhood, incentivize that. So we're going to have more density. And the thing that's important about density in an urban environment is sustainability. All those great shops, all those great restaurants, all those great galleries that we enjoy so much, that differentiate the neighborhood, those will be more sustainable, they'll thrive, there will be more of them. It'll be so this exponential progression of all the things that we love now will just become better because there'll be more people living here in a more dense neighborhood.
And you and I can have 35 more years of hanging out at O'Leary's together.
I hope so, buddy.
Yeah.
I hope so.
You do, man. No doubt.
I've got a two-pronged question. I want to know why people should be paying attention to this neighborhood. First, though, secondly, I'm going to ask you about locals, but how about you? For anybody who's come from away, anybody who's thinking about St. John, perhaps not naturally thinking about Uptown or this neighborhood south of Queen,
Yeah.
why would they take a look at it?
I think it's a bit of a, I guess a tough answer there, but I think it really depends on the person. For somebody that's looking for, a city that's not too big, it's quaint in a lot of ways. But a city that's also interesting. I think that appeals to a lot of people like myself. There's people in these larger cities that feel out of place, and perhaps don't realize why. But I think to come into a smaller city that still has everything you need, and get to experience what comes with that, and the real sense of community that comes with the smaller city, there's a lot of value in that. And I think that would appeal to a lot of people that may not even realize it right now. They're just looking for something different.
Bob, look, I grew up in the suburbs outside of the city, and when I started to be about 20, I started hanging out uptown a little bit more. I worked uptown, and I could not believe it. I couldn't believe that my parents didn't spend more time up here. Do you still encounter people who live in the suburbs who wouldn't even consider this neighborhood? And if so, why would they?
Well, there probably are some that won't, and there's some that shouldn't, and there's no room for everybody yet anyway. So it's okay, but why should you? Why you should, because the proximity to water, the proximity to the Bay of Fundy and the ocean, proximity to the river system, in a neighborhood that has this variety of heritage buildings, an authentic 150-year-old neighborhood where there's also new houses, new homes, old homes, parks, libraries, pools, new schools. I mean, all of these things are very rich quality of life, accessible, and I don't know of any other city on the eastern seaboard of North America where you can live downtown by the water for under $1 million. So that's the value equation.
That's saying something. Well, boys, I love the passion. I love the excitement. What do you say we keep it going? And because we're uptown, we walk around the corner and go grab a beer.
You betcha, buddy.
Let's do it, man.
Merry Christmas, pal.
Merry Christmas.